Welcome back. I'm Kim Fairminer here with Sam from Three Fates, and today we're diving into the Libra Ingress 2025 for Australia. Today we're looking at the Ingress chart for Canberra, overlaying it on the Federation chart, and unpacking the themes that shape the next 3 months. September has a solar eclipse, so there's a story to tell there, as do the profections linked to the Jupiter-Saturn triplicity shift. There's a lot to cover: trade, diplomacy, protests, leadership, even climate signals. So let's get into what the astrology suggests for Australia in the months ahead. Hi, my name's Kim Fairminer. I'm here with my wonderful friend Sam from Three Fates Astrology. We are here to talk about the Libra Ingress. We've been talking about this as part of our series on the mundane astrological forecast for Australia. And I think we began for the Aries Ingress, although maybe we did it last year as well. I can't remember, Sam. Feels like forever, us getting our little astrological politicking on. So I'm going to share on the screen. Oh, did you want to say hi? That'd be nice. Say hi.
Hi everyone.
Thank you.
I don't have much to say apart from astrology. But yeah,
Yeah.
hi.
Yay, astrology. We love it. And oh God, it's just so juicy when you start applying it to countries and yeah, the geopolitical ramifications, the social trends and stuff, which is what we're talking about today. And because with the Aries Ingress, we had a cardinal sign rising in 2025, we've had to come back every quarter because those are the rules. And we don't make them, Sam. We just follow these astrological rules, hey?
Yep.
Okay, here is the Libra Ingress set for Canberra. We can see the sun at 0 degrees of Libra. Happens on just before dawn on the 23rd of September 2025. And we can tell it's just before dawn because the sun is below this, below the ascendant. So this is the sunrise point on the eastern horizon. So the sun has not yet dawned. So we've got this a solar sign, Leo ruled. So that emphasizes the importance of those solar qualities to me. And it's really interesting because, you know, those natural significations of the sun, of visibility, of constancy, reliability, that the fixed sign of Leo really, embodies and brings forth. And, you know, I'm thinking, woo, like, you know, this is a Leo ruled Ingress chart. This is going to be great. But then you start having a little bit of a dig around. And all is not what it seems. So often is the case with astrology. Once you start like looking at things a little bit deeper, it's nuance, isn't it, Sam? What's your first impression of this chart? Like, what catches your eye?
And the Leo and the sun usually signify the leader of the country. Um, so it kind of looks to me that this would be, a quarter where we're looking at increased presence or governance and diplomacy being the spotlight, like a lot more political movements going on um, with our prime minister and him kind of like making deals. So just because of the Libra, the sun in Libra as well.
Yeah, I thought that as well. Yeah, because the sun is like the king, the prime minister's the closest we've got to a king. And you know, with that Leo on the ascendant, the prime minister looks strong, like he's got everything under control. But I think with the other things that I'm about to get into, he's paddling quite hard beneath the surface to
Mm.
project that calm, peaceful, diplomatic image. That inclusivity and cooperativeness that Libra require, or that Libra, is motivated to project with the sun there. So that idea of collaborative leadership, I think, is a really important thing to look at in this quarter. Um, The sun, of course, is ruled by Venus, and that's there in Virgo. It's the most angular visible planet. We've also got Uranus kind of up here close to the midheaven. To me, this brings a little bit of unreliability to those international relations and perhaps those like broader diplomatic channels. Um, the Sun and Venus here are both debilitated by sign, and they're both really close to that south node, and that's that point in the moon cycle where it dips down into the southerly latitudes. From our perspective on Earth, this is a downward energy, like a drainage point, like it's unconscious and instinctive. So these two really important planets, Venus and the Sun, there aren't purely driven by their goals, by their conscious desires. There's hidden underneath matters going on.
The sun with with the south node, it was an eclipse. So it was, the nodes are the eclipse points. So that is definitely like maybe a loss of power somehow for the country and for the Prime Minister. Um, and the Venus, if you used whole sign houses, would be ruling over the third house. So that would, definitely has to do with communications, transport. So I think we saw some of that going on in the news recently.
Yeah, yeah. I think the news cycle's always really interesting to watch around these ingress points. What's it today? Today's the 17th, so we're about a week out from when this Libra Ingress actually occurs. But I am seeing these themes in the news. Maybe it's because I've seen the chart and I'm looking for them. But I've certainly like flagged a few things that yeah, we'll sort of get into a little further on into our discussion. The other interesting thing about this sun is that it's directly opposite Neptune there, which is in that first degree of Aries. And to me, because it's an opposition, that kind of makes me think, that we're going to be deceived by our allies or enemies, and the that our goals and intent in that space are perhaps unclear or unable to hit their target because of Neptune's, soft focus blurring things. So, like, we can't really see what the other whether that is an ally, a partner, or, a known enemy's up to. Like, we just don't have a clear picture. And so I think that also speaks to that idea of the instinctive nature of the South Node. Like, there's this need for the Prime Minister, for the leadership of the country to sort of, trust that kind of gut instinct as much as the intellectual kind of more defined goals, because the space that we're operating in with our international relationships is just so hard to pin down. And perhaps that some of the hostility that Aries brings in, the Libra Sun doesn't want to believe that's there, but at the same time, there's a lot of noise happening out there in the world.
Hmm. I think it's interesting how the sun is pretty much getting hammered in
Absolutely.
this chart. There's no two ways about it. And so the sun is also just separated from an opposition with Saturn, and Saturn is ruling allies or open enemies.
Yeah.
Um, so, this Saturn is backtracking, um, it's moving backwards. It's out of Aries. Maybe some deal. Saturn has moved away from that Neptune and has kind of regained a little bit of power, even though he's retrograding because he's back. He's not so debilitated by being in Aries. And I kind of feel that this is also about something that has been happening in the news recently. It's moved out of the sun's exaltation sign and back into a
Ah,
sign that's a
yeah.
little bit happier. And
Mm.
so it's feeling like like I don't really need, you know, I don't have anything to offer you. I don't really have anything, like I for you right now, you know.
It kind of
Um,
looks like the feeling's mutual as well with that sun coming into Libra as well. Like the any kind of deal that was looking to be made in that eighth house exalted sun space, it's just like, is it worth it? Like, are we just better off on our own?
yeah, definitely is a rift has happened. Did you want to kind
Yeah, look, the countries that sort of spring to mind for me are the United States, and this kind of on again, off again is the Prime Minister going to talk to President Trump, and like, yeah, they kind of met and their circles overlap, but no. And then, of course, all the hideous things that the Israeli government and defense force are doing in Gaza and how pretty much our supposed allies there, supposedly we are, part of that kind of Western democratic bloc with Israel. But like, how can you continue to be that with these heinous things going on? Like, just when you think that they've hit kind of like when it can't get any worse, it does.
mm,
And I think this is kind of inaction, but it's a boundary as well, and it's a humanitarian boundary, and that to me kind of speaks to that, or like carries the symbolism of Saturn, the boundary, in the caring sign of Pisces, and that idea of dissolving boundaries or like, just obliterating a people off the map. Yeah, to make Palestine not exist in very concrete terms is kind of what I see over here. And like Australia, we're not a super powerful country. There are things we can do, but we haven't done them yet. And it's just like, well, it looks wishy-washy. But I'm hoping that the Libra sun's desire for peace finds a pathway to resolve that this kind of really awkward, ineffectual opposition that's happening here. Although I think sometimes, like, when an transit or, something perfects, like, sometimes action isn't great, sometimes inaction's better. But I think the ongoing nature, at least, of that, the will he, won't he? Like, will Israel back off? Will the Prime Minister meet Trump? Like, these things perhaps will be resolved this quarter, or do you see it fizzling? Like, this is the thing that I'm sort of trying to nut out in my head. Is something decisive going to happen there, or does Neptune just kind of poof it all and nothing really happens? So that's my question mark over what the sun's doing there. Like, people are trying to do something, trying to be regal, decisive, and offer, leadership, but it's not an effective sun. This Saturn Neptune stuff isn't really kind of going anywhere anytime soon. So what
well,
gives? Like, does
I think
anything give?
Libra is like really renowned for being on the fence,
True.
not knowing which way to choose, which way to go. Um, and I think the chart, it's around the eclipse. The moon is also under beams. Mercury is under beams.
Yep.
So it's almost like a feeling that the people and the governance even, because if you want to look at Venus or Mercury, if looking at whole sign houses, Venus, looking at Mercury using Regio Montanus as the 10th house ruler, like they're both in a difficult place.
Yeah.
Um, so they both kind of don't have a lot of power to choose.
Mm,
Um, and they are really both trying to be diplomatic, but not a lot of choices.
yeah.
So it feels like we're just kind of like trying to find, we're not being aggressive, we're just trying to find a way forward that's not going to get us in too much trouble because we don't have a lot of choices.
Yeah, I was just, after sort of blathering all that, I'm thinking, oh, like, which brings us to the moon, and that Mercury on the second house cusp, with Reggio, which is the house, system I've chosen for this chart, but that brings an emphasis on the financial agreements. And I also think the honoring of contracts. So it's almost to sort of put it into sort of more personal terms. It's like Australia finds itself in, in bad company, or in like a bad marriage with these alliances that we've got. And I guess when you've been with a partner for a long time, sometimes you just ride out the bad periods, in the hope that you to honor the contract and not like kind of bring down the house and have to, reconfigure, where you live and who pays the bills and the your trade agreements in terms of countries. I think that 10th house too, with ruled by Mercury, to me, and the position of Mercury there on the second house cusp, the government is really concerned about money and fairness. And that is certainly a thread that the community's feeling, the people, the moon being the common people, and like that's what we care about too, and the government knows it, that we're feeling strained in economic terms.
Maybe even trade, with the Venus ruling the ninth house, um, and Mercury in the sign of Venus could definitely be about international trade. It's also the exaltation sign of Saturn,
Yeah, and that
definitely.
brings in that Saturn thing. If yeah, we have a falling out with these allies, it has trade ramifications as well, and the disruption that that could potentially cause. And that moon's very young as well. As you've mentioned, it's only like a couple of hours after the solar eclipse, which happened at 30 degrees of Virgo. So, like less than a day before. So, that's the pre-Ingress lunation. And that solar eclipse was visible over the Pacific island nations, New Zealand, and also the very southeastern edge of Australia. So it cover like it's visible from Sydney, Canberra, and Hobart. And I have noticed in the last couple of days the news cycle has been talking a lot about bilateral security pacts with, I think it was Vanuatu, and definitely with the 50th anniversary of Papua New Guinea's independence from Australia as a colonial power. There's been talk about the integration of our defence forces. So I think it's really interesting that we've got this solar chart for solar rule chart for the Libra Ingress right off the back of that solar eclipse, which is visible over our region, that we're having increased engagement with. And there's a lot of visibility, at least in Australia. I imagine those countries, about what we're doing and how our governments are planning to cooperate or intend to cooperate a lot, a bit more with each other. Further, with that, like first house into and the seventh house have Virgo and Pisces as intercepted signs. So I know there's various ways of working with intercepted signs, but I tend to see it as like a lack of awareness or like a kind of hidden layer of meaning because the sun rules that first house because that's the sign Leo's on the ascendant there. But within that, and it's a little bit tucked away, we have Virgo, which is ruled by Mercury. So there's something going on within that, first house driving at a deeper layer, and it adds complexity. And you need to kind of scratch around for it. And over here in the seventh house, Pisces, the interceptor sign, is ruled by Jupiter. And that one's tucked away in the 12th. And as you mentioned, Mercury is under the beams of the sun. So there's this kind of like, well, what's going on at that deeper level? And is it possible to see that deeper layer of, what we're doing as a country and what our allies and enemies are doing as well? I'm really sort of super suspicious of this Jupiter, like 'cause they
Well,
are
I think,
powerful. Those
well, I
people.
think sorry,
You're
go
right.
on. Um, I was just excited then because I was just like looking at the nodes and I was, like Jupiter and Mercury are ruling, the south node and the north node. And, they're in places where they're both hidden. And the eclipse is basically about the loss of light or, kind of, you know, I guess negative. They're generally eclipses are seen as like baneful or malefic in some way because you're losing contact with the solar and lunar principles, which are our guiding lights, the spirit and the soul. And so because, Jupiter and Mercury are very much connected um, to teaching and religion and
Information.
yeah, information. So I feel like this is talking about a crisis that primarily based around maybe cultural values and religious values. Um,
The religious values. I hadn't thought of that. Because Australia isn't a very religious country, but I think it does come in because recently the government's appointed like an envoy against anti-Semitism, anti-Islamophobia. I think that's interesting, that connection you've made to religion. And of course, Venus rules like the ninth house of religious institutions as well, and that is the most angular planet. So, yeah, maybe that's the that's the intercepted sign secret is our beliefs, whether they're supported by sort of, philosophy or religious background or those peculiar cultural practices, which we just kind of take for granted and don't really delve into too much.
I think it's really interesting because I mean, I said, as I said to you earlier, I've actually switched to using my whole sign for my ingress charts. But it's interesting how even the chart, it's very interesting how even the chart can say this same thing when you're even just using a whole sign house and using Regio Montanus. So, for example, with um, with whole signs, Aries is on the ninth house, and that moves Mars into the fourth house. So um, Mars is in
Mm.
opposition to the government, you know, and so that is about religious, cultural, foreign cultures, communications, and Mars is very powerful there.
Yeah,
And
Mars is twitchy.
yeah, it's like the most powerful planet like it's super powered. Like even at the degree it's at, I think it's like in triplicity and bound as well. as in its own sign. It's like pretty much as powerful as you can get. And I think it's interesting that recently Tehran and Australia, oh sorry, Iran and Australia have just basically pulled out or removed the ambassadors for each country and have said, you're not welcome here,
They've broken
basically.
up. We've broken up with Iran.
Yeah, so that's pretty scary. Um, and the last time that happened was apparently just before World War II. So, mm,
Yes, yeah, it's a big, big deal in Australia to get your ambassadors kicked out. Yeah, and that's because they had been firebombing and attacking Jewish businesses and places of worship and just generally like, stoking that religious tension that has kind of been simmering with the war in Gaza because people are upset about that and rightly so. But yeah, I think that that idea of foreign interference and that sense of agitation and pushing buttons definitely comes in with that Mars because it's also about to square Pluto in early Aquarius. And to me, that kind of was like a big pile of like rubbish that's been doused with petrol, and somebody's just kind of like they're smoking. It's just like, a big immolation that's waiting to happen. I sort of saw this Pluto in Aquarius as like the political activism that's current in Australia at the moment, the various protest movements. A lot of it is centered on Melbourne. I think Brisbane, where I am, is less militant, but those protests are certainly active in my city. And it seems to speak to an undercurrent of discontent and the inability of the nation to move forward with like frustrating issues like the housing crisis, skills shortages, cost of living. This Pluto, because it's so close to the midheaven of Australia's swearing in chart, and I'll bring that up at the moment.
the news responsible for a lot of the things that people care about. And, using whole sign, I'm just going to refer to whole sign because that's what the charts that I've been looking at. But, that Venus would be the news. Um, and, it is also ruling over the sun, the moon, and Mercury, highlighting, the quality of the news is perhaps not is weak, and that perhaps also, Mercury under the beams, moon under the beams, that we are not actually being fed information that is like we're being kept in the dark,
Mm,
a lot of things. Like we aren't actually aware on some level of what is really happening. Um, we're getting the sugar-coated version of events or what you know
mm,
what our country wants us to hear.
yeah,
Venus in the first. Um, so I mean Venus in Virgo in the first, ruling over all of those um planets which are kind of being, I guess, eclipsed in some way.
yeah. I think even if you like, working with these quadrant houses and taking Mars as the ruler of the third house, the media squaring that Pluto, I mean, to me that screams like, manipulation and emotional reactivity. You said sugar hits, but like it's just like kind of like a rise, like we're being kind of manipulated in some way, probably for money. What do they say? Like, if somebody cries, you put it on the front page, like that pain and suffering, violence that love the violence. But yeah, it's tricky. let's have a look. I want to, show you how. I'm just changing my screen view. What do I want? Buy wheel, and I want to swap that
I just
around.
also wanted to point out that
Yeah.
Pluto is going into a chart that we're going to look at later, is
Mm.
retrograding back over this Jupiter Saturn triplicity shift point.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So here you can see that second degree MC here. Pluto's like coming across there. Um, there's Mars right on our 29-degree descendant. I mean, it's out of sign, but it just like when you lay it over on the Federation chart, this Pluto Mars square gets really loud.
Mm.
It also doesn't really sort of say that our relationships with our allies are in a good place over the next quarter. The other thing that I noted when I looked at this bi-wheel, so it's taking the Libra Ingress as a transit over the 1901 swearing in chart, one of the most important charts when we look at the mundane astrology for Australia. So the south node, the transiting south node, is coming towards Australia's stationary Mars there in Virgo. Remembering that the nodal axis moves backward through the zodiac, so this is getting tighter. And then if you look at the South Node in Australia's swearing in chart, that's just been agitated and poked and prodded by Uranus in Gemini. So to me, this feels really kind of like uneasy. Particularly around those Martian issues of conflict and confrontation. There's so yes, Mars is war. Do I think we're going to go to the war in this quarter? Probably not. Are we going to get pretty upset about our allies and what they're doing out in the world? Probably. So we'll have probably a few stern words with them through diplomatic channels. Maybe not stern, maybe it's polite, given that, we're going into a Libra quarter. So Australia, we've got a lot of like baggage and these national myths about, the soldiers and, Simpson's donkey, like all this kind of, national mythology and the war memorials, like Anzac Day, like it's a thing in Australia. War soldiers, the army. But Mars is more than the warrior. It's also a really independent planet that is happy to act by itself. So I wonder if the government is kind of like approaching their limit, and like thinking of what their red lines are with allies. Like, how far are we going to go down the garden path with these people? And, we were supposedly Israel's friend. And, like, how can you be friends with someone that's doing this thing that's not friendly at all? Yeah, so, like, these shifts in our diplomatic alliances could potentially be unfolding in this quarter. And Mars, where am I looking? Written here, Mars approaching Venus in Virgo. What? Oh, right. Yes. So this Mars in the Ingress chart is coming up to that sextile to the Ingress Virgo, which I think offers a moderating influence. So I don't think we're going to have like a massive Mars kind of Pluto blow up. But I think perhaps that the government needs to kind of start thinking about like, well, what do we blow up our alliances over? Like, yeah, where are our red lines? And I think the Tehran incident is perhaps a taster of the kind of actions that Australia might take in certain circumstances, and perhaps there's like a little bit more thinking about where that could potentially go, given the crazy times in which we live.
Hmm. I think really with this chart, all you really need to look at is Venus and Mars. Like, you got looking at Mars for Australia and then Venus for opposition. If you're talking about war, Mars is the ruler of war. And as we kind of, when we talked about the Aries ingress for this year, Mars was the ruler of the year. So Mars is talking about, this is why we're talking about this, so much about war. It's on everyone's minds, conflict. But here we've got, Mars um, in the sign of allies or enemies, open enemies, and then we've also got Venus, which is ruling over our allies or enemies, basically in opposition to the government here in the ingress chart. So this is um, this is where Venus is in the Australian Federation chart. The MC is in Gemini for the ingress. So Venus is in opposition. So it is talking about open conflict now. Um,
Not
it,
necessarily shooting people, but you might kick out an ambassador.
I guess how does war start? Do you know what I mean? Like it
Yeah.
it it usually doesn't start with a bang, it starts with little bits and pieces. I mean, I really hope that this de-escalates. But it looks like the warmongers are wanting this.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of talk about defense budgets and things, but yeah, it's
Yeah, there was a $14 billion deal just recently made with Australia and US, was it UK Oz, um, for a submarine maintenance facility
the
on
thing in Perth or near Perth in Western
yeah,
Australia. There's a
yeah.
couple of things going up there. Fancy
So
parking lot for some nuclear submarines.
that's not
Bit of
enough.
a garage happening. Yeah, so I just swapped those around as kind of like a different way of looking at. We've got the Ingress chart in there, and then Australia's swearing in planets around. That's the Venus that you were talking about before down the bottom in opposition to the midheaven. I think that's what you're talking about. Or,
Yeah.
yeah. But that's kind of like the Libra Ingress and the things I wanted to flag. But you've got some charts to share, Sam, that kind of puts this in like a broader, slower context because, yeah, it's quite rightly so. These things just don't like kind of happen, snap in a quarter. You, these quarters, roll onto other quarters that are informed by previous quarters and, the annual cycles and these bigger astrological cycles. And it's when they all kind of come together that, stuff happens.
Yeah, so I might bring my
Yep.
chart
Stop
up.
the share.
Okay, so what we're looking at now, which was what I was speaking about to Kim before, was we've all heard about the Jupiter Saturn um, triplicity shift. So, this happens like once every 240 years. And so basically, Jupiter, Saturn do connect, make a conjunction every 20 years. Um, but the triplicity shift is when they start making conjunctions instead of in, so for example, they were making conjunctions in earth signs for the last 240 years, and now they're making conjunctions in air signs. Um, and so that really spoke a lot about a big change in the way the world is going to be governed, the way the world is, going to be moving forward. And so this first conjunction happened on the 22nd of December 2020. And so I think what is happening in the world at the moment is a part of this triplicity shift. And the ancient texts often do talk about that. It's kind of like a bit of a tower event in some way, like things have to be um kind of,
Broken down before they're rebuilt. Hmm.
yeah. And so it's unfortunate that this is happening, but it is a cycle that has happened since the beginning. So I just wanted to quickly bring that up and show this is the point, zero Aquarius, um, and Pluto is currently retrograding back over that. And it has been going back and forth over that point for quite some time, which is, the escalation and de-escalation of what's been going on in the world. So, what you can do, and I've just kind of found out this, which has kind of blown my mind a bit, is because this is such a big cycle and it's a really great chart to use, um, like within your own country, um, to tell how this ongoing big change in the world and about how the world is run, it's going to affect us in an ongoing basis. So you use predictive techniques such as profections, or you can also use progressions to do this. And so I was like playing around with this, and what you do is you use the Aries ingress that either contains that triplicity shift, or so because it happened at the end of a year, we need to, it happened in December, so we're going to use the Aries ingress for 2021. So I kind of had to go back and forth and confirm that this was the one that you used. So what I did was I brought up the Aries ingress, and then I basically wanted to find out, using profections, which year. So we're currently in a fifth house year, so I'm going to have to bring up a bi-wheel to show you Felicity shift, and the outer wheel is profections. So we can see here that it's a fifth. I use like ongoing fifth house perfection, so the degrees might be a little bit out, but that's okay. It's still correct. So the moon has currently moved to the ascendant. The moon is ruling over international relationships and communications. It's just entered a sign where things have turned sour, ruled by Mars. And I think this, we just keep seeing Mars, you know. And this is why it just feels like a, increasing conflict. So Mars is currently in the 12th house, but it won't be long before it does move into the first house of the triplicity shift, and into the sign of Scorpio. So I do feel like the moon is giving us a taste of what is coming, because, this was the Aries ingress for the triplicity shift. It is all in the eighth house. It is talking about enemy or allies' finances. It is talking about how the country in general are feeling, which isn't great, being in the eighth house. And all of those signs are moving now through the first house of awareness and the actual country and experience of the people. So I think we're going to see between now and December, maybe January, increased awareness around war and conflict. Mars will be moving into the sign of Scorpio, which is very powerful. So I think that could even start signaling what Australia is doing military wise, and maybe more awareness about how we are setting up um, in terms of defense and military. We do have the ascendant moving
Hmm.
towards, yeah,
That
Neptune.
Neptune again, that kind of
Yeah,
echoes the Sun Neptune opposition for this quarter. Um, yeah, that kind of
yeah, so
what's going
it
on? I don't know.
keeps repeating, just keeps repeating. You know, you see the MC is moving, or the, if you want to look at the IC, is moving towards that Mars again. Pluto is moving over that. So it does feel like something. Let's
Yeah.
just, it
So
feels like something.
could I ask a clarifying question? This Aries ingress, because it happened after that Saturn Jupiter conjunction in the new triplicity, does that mean that this Aries ingress for Canberra is the base point for these perfections for the next 240 years?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
So that's why I think it's such an interesting chart. So I had to double check that it was the right ingress to use, and you have to use the one that is closest to the conjunction happening. You know, so the conjunction, and you really want to use it after the conjunction happened. And so this is according to the ancient texts. I had to double check because I was like, which one do I use? Do I use the 2021 that contained it, or did I use the 2021 one? So now we can just use this
Mm.
chart. So you can just use perfections going forward, seeing where we're at, checking on the news. But yeah, there's a lot going on in this chart, which is actually, you know, there's a lot happened this like past month. You know, we've got Tehran and Iran issue. We have, you know, I'm not sure when the submarine maintenance facility, but apparently the contract went through sometime this month for the, you know, 13, 14 billion maintenance thing. And then we had the Vanuatu deal go sour, which is like a big deal. That chart shows that, I think. Um,
Yeah. It's interesting, like I'm just like these cycles, like because we'll have a very similar perfection chart in 12 years' time.
mm.
Yeah. And then that will keep sort of repeating and, nesting in there for like, the next couple of centuries. It's
Yeah, so this is almost like, yeah, this is a very important chart for the next 240 years. You know, like it's going to be telling us about seeds that were planted, how those seeds are going to keep evolving, like I said, every 12 years. But you can also you know, you have to look at other charts that are going to give you nuance in that, like where are the planets? Where are the actual planets in the sky right now? And um, you always look at you will always be looking at Mars and Venus, you know, because like they're the ruling planets of, you know, Australia and the moon, of course. Um,
mm,
so let's
yeah.
move on. Did you have any questions about that or
No,
because
my little brain was just going, oh my God, what if we did this for like the beginning of the Earth triplicity, which would have included the colonization of Australia. But then like where would you set that chart? Like would you set it in London where they sort of decided, we're going to send some ships to the other side of the world and take over the place? Or would you set it for like the coordinates for what was to become Sydney, Gadigal land, for those poor people that were like, holy shit, what's that?
yeah, I'd
Just
set it
lost.
for Sydney.
Yeah. And then, but then, do you move the Aries Ingress to Canberra when Canberra was built? Like this is the thing. My little brains just started to sort of, get into the nuts and bolts of how that would.
So you would probably like have to um you know, find out the triplicity shift Aries ingress, and then you would perfect the chart until you saw um, the perfect the chart until you saw something manifesting,
Mm,
something, and then have a look what happened at that time, you know,
yeah,
just keep
yeah.
going.
Because I mean, like Australia's, like the Australia we know today, like modern Australia, it's got that black history. And as an astrologer, philosophically, these planets are always active. Like it doesn't
Oh,
necessarily what's happening, on the ground and who's in charge, but like these energies are live, like in retrospect as well as like forward. So yeah, that would be fascinating. I mean, you probably run into some sort of problems. The first being that this is, an imposed system, on, this kind of land, and also there were multiple peoples, multiple indigenous nations here. So it's, we'd be,
but I guess if you want to look at the effect of colonization on Australia, you would look at the place where they first landed. So,
yeah, yeah. Well, when they first landed and didn't bugger off, because there was a lot of trade and things happening, with the Australian Indigenous peoples before the English decided to stay at Sydney Cove.
mm.
Wow, Sam, thank you so much for like peeling my little brain off to that and sending me down a fascinating tangent. Did you have anything else you wanted to share with regards to that? That's like super, super interesting. Because yeah,
Um,
like we're so used to these fast cycles, but countries, they last centuries. And
mm.
they change and morph over time, as we're seeing, I guess, with the, dare I say, the devolution of the United States right now.
I
Yeah.
just think that, I mean, this was a game changer finding out this. Um, and I was just, reading about it and I was like, what?
Yeah,
Because
love that.
and I was like, yeah, because like why not like perfect that chart? Because it's a huge chart.
Mm,
Um, so you can also progress it. So I've like used a technique called tertiary progressions. Um, so you can have a look at you know, that's basically a day for every synodic month. It's a
mm.
kind of
Oh, day
yeah,
to a month is interesting, isn't it? Because that's, to me, it's not a natural kind of fit, because a day is solar and a month is lunar in my head. Um,
yeah. So it's a little bit out there, but Richard Hauck uses it in his Astrology of Death book, which I've been like devouring because it's so amazing. And so basically he uses these techniques not just for death, but for um predicting um everything, like marriages, like all the things that go on in people's lives. And so we see here again, um, the Venus, which I talked about, let's just look at Mars and Venus because that seems to be a pretty strong topic,
I think that
and it,
Venus was the midheaven of the Libra Ingress too. Yeah, 7 degrees of Gemini.
yeah, so we see again.
Mm,
uh, So we see again, Venus moving towards a conjunction with
Mars.
Mars. Um, it moves very slowly, tertiary progressions.
Mm,
Um, so you're also looking at the moon a lot. So let's see, what's Mars doing? I haven't. So moon is about to move into Cancer. Um, It is about to join the Descendant. Um,
mm,
and then let's see where the moon
That
is.
almost sort of
Yeah,
suggests to me like kind of like new alliances, new international
yeah.
partnerships with Venus and Mars so close, and then the moon, coming into dignity on that ninth house cusp. New friends.
I also think that this could be about immigration as well.
Mm.
Um,
God, hasn't that been in the news?
that's been in the news a lot.
Yeah.
Um, and 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 one thing I was really noticing in all of the charts, which I didn't really bring up, but it's also shown up. There's a lot of fourth house action, like in the charts I was looking at. Um, so and yeah, so the moon is in general um about the people, about the feelings of people and about maybe in here it's about international relationships, international communications. It isn't a sign that generally rules over land, agriculture as well as capital
Housing.
housing.
Yeah.
Um, so that is going to become more and more of a topic, but that moon is also moving towards Mars, you know.
Yeah.
So I do see increasing conflict about these issues. Yeah.
How soon? It'll be like some kind of years before that moon gets to Mars.
Mm. So it'll
Yes.
probably be like I think about so let's say if it's a day for a month, so it'll be like one more day. So maybe 10 months.
Okay, so not that far. Gosh, I wonder if that means we'll have like a rainy summer or something and some flooding and destruction.
Would definitely be. And I think that's also the Mercury. Oh, sorry, the Neptune.
Ah, yes. Oh gosh, yes. In that other chart we looked at before, the ascendant was right on Neptune as well. Mm, yeah. Don't
Yeah.
buy coastal property, kids.
No, oh my God. Looking
Yeah.
just recently about, I think it was maybe it was Brisbane, I'm not sure, but all of those huge properties, like right on the beach, main
Ah,
beach.
yeah. Oh, yeah. After that cyclone, they were all like trying to kind of stick the beach back on.
Uh,
And people are building a lot of seawalls, like, yeah, to try and sort of, I don't know, keep themselves out of the sea for the next 20 years or so. It's yeah, I don't know. Feel a little bit smug here in suburbia, although, like flash flooding is also a thing. But yeah. Wow. We didn't even touch the weather this time. Normally we get into the weather, but too much geopolitical action.
mm. I
Yeah.
think the weather for me, like, I mean, this was my ingress chart, is a little
Hmm.
bit different to you. So it is. Well, I know just
Oh,
through
it looks a
following the
lot
weather because
angrier
I'm
with
kind of
the
interested.
Mars Pluto on the angles because it's whole
Yeah.
sign.
So I think that we are supposed to have, well, there's definitely going to be increased humidity, but um, it's in a wet sign, but it is ruled by Mars. I think what they're predicting is actually an increased wet spring. Um, and then it's going to transition, they are saying right now, into
Mm,
dry.
mm. That's actually, I think, in terms of the triplicity shift happening and the shift that we're experiencing with climate and going from earth, a stable element, into air, which, swirling winds, storms, just like general shifts in the atmosphere. Yeah, so 240 years of getting used to climate change. Um, yeah.
We'll roll with it.
Yeah. All right, Sam, I think we should probably wrap this up. I've got to take my dog to her underwater hydrotherapy. Um, so her little booty is even again after her surgery. For anyone following along this deep into our very, very gloriously nerdy astrological chat, I freaking love these chats with you, Sam, and I'm delighted to be able to share it with the people of YouTube.
Lots
Yeah.
of fun, always.
Yeah. All right, we have to come back for the Capricorn Ingress because the stars have compelled us. So that'll be in December. Maybe try and do that a little bit early because the
Mm.
solstice, I'll hopefully be somewhere coastal with a drink in hand. Yeah, not worried too much about the planets at that point. Just, yeah, other than the sun and slapping my sunscreen on. Um, but yeah. You have a fantastic week. I will, yeah, we'll share this around. Please tell us what you think. Any connections you've made in the comments, any listeners, watchers, viewers, that's what we call them here. Yeah, we would love to hear from you. Check out Sam's website, come visit mine, see what we're up to. We're also on the socials, so have a bit of a sniff around there. And we'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.